And here is the Writer's Almanac for Thursday, April the 25th, 2019. It's the birthday of Marconi, Guglielmo Marconi, born in Bologna, Italy, 1874, who was only 20 years old when he got interested in electricity and electromagnetic waves, or radio waves. Started building his own equipment. He wanted to improve on wireless telegraph technology. In 1895, he was able to transmit over a hill, about a mile. 6 years later, he sent and received a signal across the Atlantic Ocean. Credit for the invention of radio comes down to a series of patent battles, and Marconi battled against a man named Nikola Tesla, who was ready to transmit a signal in 1895, but a fire destroyed his lab and all of his work before he could do it. It all went to court. Marconi had better connections than Tesla did. Tesla's patents were overturned. Marconi got the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1911, but Tesla's original patent for radio was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1943. 1953, on this day in the journal Nature, James Watson Francis Crick published the paper that first described the structure of DNA. It was Friedrich Miescher who discovered DNA way back in the late 1860s, but Watson and Crick described the DNA molecule as a three-dimensional double helix. It was 50 years later, on this day, 2003, the Human Genome Project announced that it had finished identifying and mapping the genes in human DNA, the largest single investigation in modern science. Scientists had expected to find that humans had more than 100,000 genes. Turns out we have only around 30,000, about the same as mice. It's the birthday of the poet Ted Kooser, born Ames, Iowa, 1939, who said, "I had a wonderfully happy childhood." He started writing poetry seriously as a teenager. He said, "I was desperately interested in being interesting. Poetry seemed a way of being different." Went to college, flunked out of grad school, took the first job he was offered at a life insurance company, worked there for 35 years. Ted Kooser says, "I believe that writers write for perceived communities. I worked every day with people who didn't read poetry, who hadn't read it since they were in high school, and I wanted to write for them." So, every morning he got up at 4:30, made a pot of coffee, wrote until 7, then he put on his suit and his tie, and he went to work. It's the birthday of Howard R. Garris, born in Binghamton, New York, 1873, who gave us Uncle Wiggily, the old rabbit in the suit and the top hat. Garris was a reporter for the Newark Evening News. He wrote hundreds of children's books, published his first Uncle Wiggily story in a newspaper in 1910. It was so popular, he ended up writing an Uncle Wiggily story 6 days a week for more than 30 years. Howard R. Garris said, "Half the fun of nearly everything is thinking about it beforehand or afterward." It's the birthday of Ella Fitzgerald, Newport News, Virginia, 1917. When she was 16, she entered a contest at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, walked on stage wearing ragged clothes, men's boots. She sang "The Object of My Affection," won the contest. Soon she was fully employed in the nightclubs of New York. Ella Fitzgerald, who said, "The only thing better than singing is more singing." Here's a poem by Ted Kooser. Parents. My dead parents try to keep out of my way. When I enter a room, they have already left it, gone off to find something that ought to be done elsewhere in the house. My dad rolling the hoover, my mother with dust rag and pledge. At times, I've heard their old slippers pattering away down the hall, or seen for only an instant what might be the hem of her skirt as it swept through a door. I leave all the cleaning supplies where they're easy to find, and they seem to last forever. You don't need to go, I call out through the echoing rooms, but they've never turned back. They leave the floors shining behind them and remember to turn off the lights. A poem by Ted Kuzer, Parents, from Kindest Regards, New and Selected Poems, published by Copper Canyon Press and used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.
Happy National Poetry Month. I'm Hayden Saunier, and some of my poems have recently been featured on the Writer's Almanac. If you appreciate discovering new poetry through this program, please consider donating to the Writer's Almanac today. The link to donate is in the email newsletter, which you can sign up for at garrisonkeeler.com/subscribe.